Those words keep playing in my head, over and over. The day I found out that the man I trusted, the one I built my life around, had someone else in his heart. And not just anyone. It was his first love. The one who'd been there before me, the one I thought he'd left in the past. It was supposed to be a regular night at home, just the two of us. I'd made dinner, something simple, hoping we could enjoy a quiet moment together. But lately, he'd been distant. His mind seemed somewhere else, and I tried to tell myself it was just stress or work. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Then I saw it, her name, in a message on his phone. My heart sank. I'd only heard him mention her once or twice, just as a memory. But seeing her name, reading their messages, made my hands shake. They weren't just catching up. Their words felt close, familiar, like there was still something between them. The truth hit me hard. My husband, my partner, had never really let her go. She was his first, the one who still held a piece of him that I could never touch. And here I was, believing we had something solid, when maybe I was wrong. I felt frozen, standing alone in the dark, my heart heavy with questions. I wanted to ask him why, but I was scared of what he'd say. What if he told me it was true? What if I was just the second choice? That night, everything I thought I knew fell apart. Our home felt empty, his presence seemed distant. I was living in the shadow of a past that I was never really part of. He had betrayed me, and I was left alone, holding on to pieces of a life that suddenly felt like a lie. The days that followed felt like a blur. I was stuck in a fog of anger and hurt, unsure of what to do or say. I couldn't look at him the same way, couldn't stop wondering if he was thinking about her. But before I could decide what to do next, everything changed. It happened so fast. One moment I was driving, my mind full of questions and pain. The next, there were blinding lights, the sound of screeching tires, and then, nothing. Just darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses. Everything felt strange, heavy. I tried to remember how I got there, tried to piece together what had happened, but my mind was blank, like someone had taken parts of my life and erased them. As I looked around, I saw his face. He was sitting next to my bed, his expression filled with worry and guilt. But something was missing. I recognized him, yes, but there was no feeling, no connection. It was like looking at a stranger I'd seen a few times before, but never really knew. He leaned in, speaking gently. "Are you okay?" His voice sounded familiar, but it didn't bring any warmth or comfort. I nodded slowly, but inside, I was confused. Why was he here? Why did it feel like he meant something to me, yet nothing at all? The doctors told me that the accident had affected my memory. Some things were clear, but others were just gone. And apparently, he was one of those things. A part of my life that I should remember but couldn't. As he sat there, trying to remind me of who he was and what we had, I felt strangely calm. The pain, the betrayal, it was all faded, distant. I couldn't feel the hurt that had once overwhelmed me. It was like that part of my life had been erased along with him, leaving a strange sense of peace instead of anger. In that moment, I realized something. Maybe losing those memories was a gift, a chance to start over without the weight of what he'd done. As I lay there, looking at the man who'd broken my heart but feeling nothing, I wondered if forgetting him completely might be the fresh start I never knew I needed. Let me know if you'd like to move to the next part. The days in the hospital passed slowly, filled with quiet moments of trying to remember and understand. Friends and family came by, telling me stories about my life, trying to bring back the pieces I had lost. But every time he came to visit, I felt nothing. No spark, no pull. Just a vague sense that he had been part of my life once, though I couldn't feel why. After I was discharged, I returned to a house that felt strangely unfamiliar. I moved from room to room, seeing photos and reminders of a life I couldn't remember. There were pictures of us together, smiling, happy, but they felt like images of someone else's story, a story I could no longer connect with. The life I'd shared with him felt empty, like a dream I'd forgotten. As the days turned into weeks, I started to rebuild my life, this time without him in the center. I found comfort in small things, books I enjoyed, music that felt like mine, long walks that cleared my mind. Friends would sometimes mention moments I'd had with him, but I'd shake my head, feeling no need to remember those details. Whatever we'd had, whatever he'd meant to me, it didn't feel real anymore. There were times when he'd call or come by, hoping, I think, to remind me of who we had been. He'd look at me with sadness, trying to spark a memory or feeling. But each time I felt an odd sense of peace in not knowing, a strange relief in the blank space where he had once been. Without those memories, I felt free. Free of the weight of betrayal, free of the hurt he'd caused. In the quiet of those days, I began to rediscover who I was outside of him, outside of what we'd once been. Piece by piece, I was learning to fill my life with things that felt real to me, things that didn't depend on memories or love lost. And slowly I realized that maybe this accident wasn't a curse, but a gift. A chance to live without the pain of a past I no longer needed. One afternoon, as I was settling into my new routine, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find him standing there, looking tired and unsure, with that same look of guilt and longing I'd seen in the hospital. He asked if we could talk, and though part of me wanted to turn him away, I felt like maybe I owed him a chance. Or maybe I was just curious to see if he could bring back any memories. We sat across from each other, an awkward silence filling the space. Finally, he started talking, telling me about us, about how we'd met, and all the little things we'd shared. I watched him closely, trying to feel something, trying to connect his words to a part of me that might remember. But his stories felt like they were about two strangers. He looked into my eyes, his voice breaking as he said, "I know I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I could see he meant every word, but to me, they sounded distant, hollow, like an apology meant for someone I didn't know anymore. As he spoke, I searched my mind, hoping for a spark, a feeling, even a trace of the pain he'd caused. But there was nothing. The accident had left me with only fragments of our past, and none of them seemed to carry any hurt or betrayal. He reached out, gently taking my hand, as if he could pull those memories back for me. But his touch felt strange, unfamiliar. I could tell he wanted me to remember, to somehow pick up the pieces and put us back together. But as I looked at him, all I felt was a strange sense of freedom, a freedom from the past, from the pain I couldn't feel anymore. I told him that while I could understand his regret, I couldn't remember our life together, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. That whatever connection we once had was gone, erased along with my memory of him. He looked crushed, like he'd hoped I would forgive and remember, but I knew that even if those memories came back, the trust would still be broken. In that moment, I realized that I was ready to let him go, to leave him behind in a past I could no longer feel. Whatever we'd once had was lost, and with it, the part of me that once believed in him. After that conversation, a strange calm settled over me. I felt like I had finally closed a door that had been left open since the accident. He had poured out his regret, tried to make things right, but the memories, the hurt, the betrayal, were still gone, and without them, there was nothing left to hold on to. Days passed, and he tried reaching out a few more times. Each time, I found myself feeling less and less connected to the person he was, and even more disconnected from the person he said I used to be. He was clinging to memories, to a love that was one-sided now. But I'd begun to see my life without him in it, and it felt lighter. One afternoon, as I was going through a few things in the house, I found an old box tucked away in a closet. Inside were photos, letters, and little mementos from our time together. Each item felt like it belonged to someone else, someone I couldn't recognize. I went through them slowly, looking at the smiles, the memories, but feeling nothing more than a faint curiosity. I took a deep breath and decided it was time. I packed up the box and placed it by the door, ready to let go of the last pieces of a life that no longer felt like mine. Each item in that box was a part of a story that no longer fit who I was becoming. When he came by later that evening, I handed him the box. "I think you need this more than I do," I said, my voice calm, steady. He looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness and understanding. He knew that this was my way of saying goodbye, of letting him go for good. As he walked away, carrying the box of memories, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't burdened by the past anymore. I was free to move forward, to build a life that was truly mine. And with that simple act of letting go, I found a kind of peace I hadn't known I needed. With that final goodbye, my life truly began to feel like my own again. There were no more shadows of who I had been with him, no lingering pain from memories I couldn't feel. I woke up each day with a sense of calm, a freedom that felt new and refreshing. I had been given a second chance, a blank slate to build a life without the weight of the past. I began to fill my time with things that brought me joy, simple things that I'd once loved but had forgotten. I took up painting again, losing myself in colors and patterns, each stroke of the brush feeling like a small piece of me coming back to life. I explored new places in the city, found new coffee shops, and even signed up for a yoga class. Every experience felt fresh and full of promise, like I was meeting the world again for the first time. I made new friends too, people who knew me only as I was now, without the burden of my old life. They didn't know the stories of my past, the pain I'd once carried, and that felt freeing. For the first time, I felt like I didn't need to explain myself, didn't need to carry any past version of me. I could just be. Each day I felt stronger and more at peace with the life I was building. There were moments when I would wonder if my memories would ever return, if some part of me would remember him and all we'd been through. But as the weeks went on, I found that I no longer needed those answers. I was content with what I had now and the person I was becoming. The accident, once a moment of tragedy, had become a blessing in disguise, a chance to start over without holding on to a love that was never truly mine. With every new day, I felt a little more whole, a little more like the person I was always meant to be. As time went on, I realized just how much I had changed. The person I saw in the mirror was someone stronger, someone who no longer needed validation from anyone else. I had spent so long trying to hold on to a relationship that was already slipping away, believing that my worth was tied to someone else's love. But now, I knew better. I no longer felt anger or sadness when I thought of him. Instead, I felt grateful. Grateful that I had been given a chance to find out who I was on my own. The love I had once fought so hard to keep was replaced with something deeper. Self-respect, self-love, and an unshakable belief in my own worth. I started setting new goals, dreaming of things I wanted to achieve on my own. I thought about traveling, about starting projects I'd always been curious about, but had put off for so long. I wanted to live boldly, to embrace life fully, without holding back. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. One evening, as I watched the sunset from my apartment, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. I was no longer haunted by what could have been or burdened by what had happened. My story was now mine alone, a story of resilience and growth, of finding strength in the unlikeliest of places. I whispered a quiet promise to myself, to live a life that was true to me, to never settle for anything less than I deserved. I didn't need anyone else's love to feel complete. I was whole, all on my own, and that was enough. With a new sense of purpose and a heart full of hope, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. This was my life, my journey, and I was finally in control. In the months that followed, I felt a strength I had never known before, a quiet, steady confidence that carried me forward. Every choice, every step felt deliberate, like I was finally walking on a path I'd carved out for myself. My life was no longer defined by someone else's presence or absence. It was mine, filled with purpose, joy, and the freedom to be exactly who I was meant to be. I began doing things I'd always dreamed of. I traveled to places I had only seen in pictures, each new destination a reminder of how vast the world was and how many possibilities lay ahead. I made new connections, met people who inspired me, and explored parts of myself that I had once forgotten. One day, as I stood on a hill overlooking a beautiful sunset, I thought back to everything I had been through. The heartbreak, the accident, the memory loss, all of it had shaped me into the person I was now. I no longer felt anger, sadness, or regret. Instead, I felt grateful. Grateful for the strength that had grown from those experiences, grateful for the chance to rebuild myself, and grateful for the freedom to create a life that felt genuinely my own. When people asked about my past or what had happened with him, I would simply smile. I didn't need to explain or justify anything anymore. My life now spoke for itself. A life filled with meaning, with resilience, and with the quiet, powerful love I had found within myself. As I looked toward the future, I felt a thrill of excitement for all that was to come. I was no longer afraid of being alone or unsure of my path. I was strong, whole, and at peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I could face them. This was my story, my journey, and I was ready to live it fully and fearlessly. The past was just a chapter, one that had taught me strength and self-worth. Now I was free to embrace everything life had to offer, with a heart open to joy and a spirit unafraid of the unknown. As time went on, I felt an urge to share my story, not for sympathy, but to inspire others who might feel lost, broken, or unsure of their own worth. I had come so far, and I knew there were others out there who needed to hear that healing was possible, that starting over was not just an ending, but a new beginning. I began by writing down my journey, each chapter a reminder of my strength, each memory a stepping stone that had led me to this new place. Eventually, I started sharing pieces of it, through a blog, on social media, even speaking at local events. Every time I opened up, I felt a sense of release, a freedom that grew stronger with every word. My story wasn't just mine anymore, it was a message of resilience for anyone who needed to hear it. People started reaching out, sharing their own stories, their own struggles. Some had faced heartbreak, others had dealt with loss or betrayal. And as they shared, I realized that our stories were connected, that through pain, we find each other, and through healing, we find ourselves. By helping others see their own strength, I found even more purpose in my journey. I was no longer defined by what had happened to me, but by how I had chosen to grow from it. Each connection, each conversation brought a new level of meaning to my life. Standing on the other side of everything I'd been through, I could finally see how far I had come. My life was now a testament to resilience, to the power of letting go, and to the beauty of starting anew. I no longer saw the accident, the betrayal, or the heartbreak as tragedies. Instead, they were the foundations of the life I had built, a life filled with purpose, strength, and joy. And as I looked toward the future, I felt ready for whatever lay ahead. My journey was far from over, but I knew now that no matter what, I had the strength to face it, to rise, and to keep moving forward. As I continued to share my journey and connect with others, I discovered something unexpected: true happiness. Not the kind that depends on anyone else's approval or love, but a happiness rooted deeply within me, in knowing who I was and what I'd overcome. Every day, I woke up feeling grateful, not only for the life I had now, but for every challenge, every setback, and every moment that had shaped me. I no longer looked back with regret or pain. The past was simply a chapter, one that I had read and closed, knowing it had made me stronger. I filled my days with things that mattered to me. I focused on my passions, took on new projects, and surrounded myself with people who supported my growth and celebrated my joy. Life had become a beautiful adventure, one that I was finally living on my own terms. There were still quiet moments, times when I'd sit by myself reflecting on everything I'd been through. But instead of feeling sadness, I felt pride. I'd learned to love myself, to stand tall without anyone else's validation, and to embrace my own worth fully. As I looked toward the future, I no longer felt any fear or hesitation. My life was a story of resilience, of transformation, and of finding happiness within myself. I knew there would be more challenges, but I also knew that I had everything I needed to face them. This was my life, filled with meaning, purpose, and joy. And as I walked forward, I carried with me the strength of 1,000 lessons, the wisdom of 1,000 experiences, and the unshakable belief that I was enough. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was truly living. And that, more than anything, was the greatest gift I had ever received. As time passed, I found myself embracing each day with a new sense of wonder. Life felt like an open book, with blank pages waiting to be filled. Not by expectations or past mistakes, but by my own dreams, choices, and passions. For the first time, I was the author of my own story, writing each chapter with purpose and joy. One evening, as I sat watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a deep gratitude settle within me. It wasn't just gratitude for the good moments, but also for the painful ones, the ones that had broken me open, forcing me to grow in ways I never expected. Every heartbreak, every setback had led me to this beautiful sense of peace. I knew now that happiness wasn't something to be chased or found in someone else. It was something I carried within, a quiet contentment that came from truly understanding who I was. I felt whole, complete, and at ease, knowing that everything I had been through had brought me to this moment. Looking back, I realized that I had come full circle. I had started this journey believing that love from someone else would complete me, only to discover that I was enough all along. And with that knowledge, I stepped into each new day with confidence, knowing that no matter what life brought, I would be ready. My life was now filled with meaning, love, and gratitude, not because of anyone else, but because of the strength I had found within myself. The past was behind me, and the future stretched out like a beautiful path waiting for me to explore it. And as I stood there, watching the sky fade into dusk, I whispered a promise to myself: to live fully, love deeply, and to always honor the person I had become. This was the life I had fought for, the happiness I had earned, and I was ready to embrace every moment of it. With each passing day, I felt more at home in my own skin. I had not only survived my past, but I had grown from it, discovering strengths I never knew I had. My heart, once weighed down by hurt and betrayal, was now open, free, and ready to embrace life fully. I no longer felt the need to close myself off to protect from pain. Instead, I felt a newfound courage to experience everything life had to offer. I learned to love the small moments: morning sunrises, laughter with friends, quiet evenings filled with nothing but my thoughts. Each moment was a reminder of how far I'd come, and how I had rebuilt myself from the inside out. People around me noticed the change. Friends who had seen me at my lowest now marveled at my strength, at the way I carried myself with such peace and confidence. They'd ask how I managed to heal, how I had found joy again. And each time I would smile, knowing that my journey had taught me that true strength comes from within, from facing the darkness and finding light on the other side. As I continued moving forward, I realized that my past no longer defined me. It was simply a part of my story. A story of resilience, self-discovery, and the courage to let go. And while I didn't know what the future held, I felt ready for whatever came my way, knowing I had the strength to handle it. I was finally living with an open heart, unafraid of what could go wrong, but hopeful for everything that could go right. My life was now a beautiful blend of strength, vulnerability, and love for who I had become. This was the beginning of something truly wonderful. A life of openness, joy, and endless possibility.